Welcome to Sentimentshub. Today we're going to talk about something that can be really confusing and honestly a little bit painful. It's that feeling you get when you realize you might have outgrown your friends. We're going to get into why that happens and why it's not just okay, but actually a really powerful sign that you're on the right track.
You ever get that feeling? You're sitting in a room, surrounded by people who've known you forever, but you feel completely and totally alone? You're right there, but it's like you're a million miles away. It's such a weird, unsettling feeling, isn't it?
You know, the old inside jokes just don't land anymore. The stories they're telling, they feel like they happened to a different person. And that connection that used to be so easy, so effortless, now it feels like work. You walk away feeling more drained than you did when you got there.
So what is this thing? This gap that just seems to appear out of nowhere between people who used to be inseparable? Let's dive into what we're calling the unspoken distance.
And this is the question, right? It just echoes in your head over and over. What happened? You rack your brain trying to find a reason, that one single moment where everything changed, but you just can't find it. And that's exactly why it's so confusing. This isn't a big movie moment with a huge fight. No, it's way more subtle than that. It's this slow, quiet drift. It's kind of like two ships that started out sailing right next to each other, but ever so slowly they started pointing in different directions. And one day you look up and you can't even see the other ship on the horizon anymore.
Now, here's where things get really interesting. This isn't just some vague feeling you have. There's actually a real psychological concept that explains this whole thing perfectly. So let's talk about the science behind what's called value drift.
So what is value drift? Basically, it just means that the person you are today is not the same person you were 5 or even 10 years ago. Think about it. Every single experience you have, every book you read, every challenge you face, it all subtly reshapes what matters to you. This is the engine of your personal growth.
So what does this actually look like? Well, maybe back then it was all about spontaneous nights out and climbing the career ladder. But now, a quiet evening at home might sound like pure bliss. It's less about career ambition and way more about your personal well-being. You've gone from trying to fit in to just wanting to be your authentic self. That's not a small shift, that's a fundamental change.
So knowing that this drift is totally natural, we have to ask a pretty critical question. Is this discomfort you're feeling a sign that you're stuck, or could it actually be a sign that you're growing?
This is the root of that friction. You've changed, but your social circle is still operating on the old software. So you're trying to fit the new you into an old relationship box, and it just doesn't fit. And man, that tension is exhausting because you're totally out of sync.
Now, the opposite of all this growth is something we can call identity stagnation. This is what happens when we hold on so tightly to who we used to be and the people who knew us that way that we actually stop ourselves from becoming the person we're meant to be now.
And this is the most important thing to hear right now. That feeling of being a stranger, that feeling of being totally drained, it's not a sign that you're broken. It's not a failure. It's a growing pain. It's your gut sending you a huge flashing signal that you have evolved.
But of course, with this realization comes the guilt. Oh man, the guilt can be heavy. It can feel like you're betraying your friends, betraying your own history. But we have to reframe this. This isn't betrayal, it's your evolution.
Okay, so what do we do about it? Well, here's a little roadmap. First, just acknowledge the shift is happening. No judgment. Second, let yourself grieve what you're losing. It's okay to be sad. Third, and this is a big one, you have to actively honor your own growth. And finally, you got to give yourself permission to embrace a new path, even if it means walking with new people.
I love this way of thinking about it. A snake doesn't shed its skin because it hated its old skin. It sheds its skin because it's gotten too big for it. It has to in order to keep growing. And sometimes our friendships are that old skin.
And please remember this. Moving on does not erase all the good memories. It doesn't mean that friendship wasn't important. In fact, one of the best ways to honor that past is to be true to the person that it helped you become today. You're just making space for your future self.
And that brings us to the final and I think the most powerful part of this whole thing, getting to actually embrace your new chapter. So let's wrap up with the key takeaways. First, your emotional energy is a compass. Trust it. If you feel drained, that's information. Second, growth needs new environments, a new soil to grow in. Third, and I want you to really let this sink in, it is okay to evolve. And finally, seek out connections that click with who you are today, not who you used to be.
So from now on, let's stop looking back and asking what went wrong. It's the wrong question. It's time to look forward and ask something much more exciting. Who am I becoming? Because the answer to that question, well, that's the beginning of your next great chapter.